Sarah McGuinness, and the title I talk tonight is Security for Champions. And we're talking about how to establish and manage an effective Security Champions programme. So, yes, Sarah McGuinness. I've got over 30 years' experience. I've worked in all roles across the system development lifecycle. So I've been a developer, test manager, project and programme manager. I've been a business analyst, and I've had the business analyst capability in a couple of organisations. I've worked mainly in retail, so I've worked for Boots and Danone and Apple. I've worked for consultancy and for the antivirus company Trend Micro. On the side, I work for the British Computer Society, and I'm an assessor there from their diplomas. I've really focused on information security in the last 6 years, and I've recently moved, so I'm now the head of security education awareness at the Department for Work and Pensions. But recently I was DevSecOps relationship manager at Experian, and that's where I've got lots of my experience to talk to tonight. At Experian, I led a global team, and we looked at all the security education for those roles in the system development lifecycle. So what does a developer need to know to code securely, or how does an architect threat model? I led a team that established a global programme of security champions. And then finally, I volunteer, so I've contributed to an ISF paper, and I'm an I-100 volunteer for the National Cyber Security Centre. This is a scope of my talk tonight. So what I'm trying to show with these icons is that Security Champions is the human firewall, and these blue icons, now they're actual takeaways. So if you wanted to, you could, these would be like methods or techniques, and you could take them away from the talk tonight and implement them in your organisation. First of all, I'll be talking about the threat landscape. Why are we here tonight? Why is security so important? And then, why would we use a security champion? What are their deliverables? When we've realised the need for security and what security champions can bring, then it's, well, who should we focus on to be a security champion? And what are their good qualities? When we've focused and we've targeted the people, how do we recruit them? And then this last part of my talk tonight, it's all about, well, when you've got your programme up and running, what are the challenges you might meet, and how would you effectively meet those challenges? So, threat landscape. Why are we here tonight? Well, we've got cybercrime, we've got state nation attacks. There are lots of figures out there, and I'm sure you know them all, but a couple are in my head. In 2015, the FBI did a study, and they estimated the global cost of cybercrime to be $665 million. And then only 3 years later, the University of Surrey did a study, and they estimated by 2021 that global cost of cybercrime was going to be 19 trillion. So it just shows the exponential rise in cybercrime. We'll talk about Russia later, but the four main players are seen as China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. But we mustn't just focus on Russia, because I was at a Mandu talk a couple of weeks ago, and China have exponentially accelerated their cybercrime in the last year. And then we've got new players, so we've got Colombia, Latvia, India as well. They're very evident in cybercrime. But it's really flourished in Russia. So in 1999, Putin came in, and then he led his stall out, and he said the importance of cyber then. And it's felt, with September 11th, the focus was taken away from Russia, and it really flourished. It's also helped by a couple of laws they've got in Russia. So in Russia, it's illegal for cyber criminals to target organisations in Russia, in their own country, but they can do what they want outside of Russia. It's like fill your boots, to quote Nathan. I like that phrase. And then they've got this law called the 152FZ. What that means is, if authorities in the UK suspected Russian cyber criminals, they can't investigate them directly. They have to escalate it to the UK government, who then have to talk to the Russian government, who then might choose to investigate cyber criminals. But it's not just cybercrime in Russia. We've got state nation attacks. And the Ukraine-Russia conflict is not the first example. So back in 2002, when we had Chechen rebels who took hostages in a Russian theatre, Russia retaliated by bringing down one of the Chechen rebels' sites. They defaced it. And then we got to 2008, the Russia-Georgia conflict, and this was the first time that we saw kinetic forces, so land, sea and air, were being used by Russia to fight Georgia, on the same par as cyber. So they're using cyber with DDoS attacks to bring down Georgian websites. And then we've got to the Ukraine conflict now. We think there's been 9 substantial malware attacks from Russia to the Ukraine. One that I've heard about is they attacked a bank. It wasn't that successful, but they, when they did it, they also launched a social campaign. So they were trying to spread fear amongst the citizens, trying to get a run on the bank. They've used deep fake. I don't know if you've all seen that video of the president of the Ukraine. You can tell it's a deep fake because the corners of his mouth, they're sort of twitching funnily. He's doing lots of blinking. It's not him. But what they're trying to do is to let the Ukraine citizens think he wants them all to surrender. And the Russians have typo squatted a Twitter account of the Ukrainian president's wife. So they replaced an I with a 1 and made it look like her Twitter account. And she's supposedly sending out these messages to surrender. Apart from the attack on the Eurovision Song Contest at the weekend, which I'm still I'm so pleased that Italians spoiled it, I don't know of any attack now from Russia, a state nation attack to organisations outside of the Ukraine. But it is an ever-present threat. It's felt that if they were to, they won't go after the government or healthcare or utilities, because that could be seen as a real sign of war, a declaration of war. But what they might go for is financial institutions. One advantage, though, of the Ukraine-Russian conflict is that you know all the economic sanctions they put in place. Well, what's it actually done is stopped ransomware attacks. Because Russians can't get the payments across to Russia. I was at a Mandian report. In the last 2 weeks, they've seen a real decline in the number of ransomware attacks that have come out of Russia. So that's a bit positive. We all significantly, we all know how important security is now. I know we're all here tonight. But here's the good news. Here's security champions. So these are some of the deliverables that I've seen security champions bring to an organisation. Now, first of all, having a security champion as a developer, they're your person in the product team, and they're going to fly the flag for security. They're going to make sure it gets the right priority. But then also, it's all about building the relationship. There's Todd Barnum, who's a cybersecurity awareness guru, and he says the strength of your programs and the strength of your relationships. So when we change any policy in application security, I reach out to the security champions and say, well, how is that going to affect your day-to-day? And then also I run an RFP for a SaaS tool, and I reached out to the security champions and understood what their requirements, what languages do they use, what reporting requirements, how are they integrating the CI/CD pipeline. And if you really have a good relationship, then they come to you. So I had a principal developer. It's fair to say the standard of service he got from a pen test team could be enhanced, and he came straight to me, and I could get clarification, and we could enhance the quality of what service was delivered in the pen test team, and we could deal with it straight away. Now, if we hadn't had that relationship, the principal developer could have escalated to the program manager, could have escalated to the director, that could have come across to the CISO and down. So that really helped out there. They're also really useful. When you're in an organisation that's siloed, you can use security champions to share best practice. So you can facilitate it by having mini conferences or internet sites, and you can have developers in different countries talk to one another. And then really practically as well, if you use architects or principal developers, you give them security education, they can review and approve code mitigations. So that's why they're so good. But who should we go after? I've got the DevOps figure 8 here. And what these icons are showing is absolutely those people who build and develop our code. And I talked a load about how they helped in the last slide. They're what you need to go after, your principal developers. But I also think that all the other roles in the DevOps lifecycle are worthwhile going out for. So you could bring in testers. Could we make sure that security is in the test strategy? I've had a lot of success with operations, so we know how important patching is. But also, I went through with operations and looked at the top 10 cloud security misconfigurations, and then I worked with AWS, and we had a 2-hour education session which addressed these cloud misconfigurations, how to remediate them, how to prevent them. And they were really up for it. They attended 2 hours of their time, hardly had any dropouts. It's important to bring in the delivery managers, the product managers, those people who are going to influence the priority of items in the backlog. And then to fly the flag for BAs, systems analysts, business analysts. We know that their bread and butter is requirements, are user stories, and it's so important, if we're going to shift left, to bring security right at the beginning of the project. If you've read Aaron Roberts' book, Cyber Threat Intelligence, all the way through the book he talks about the importance of security requirements. Some systems analysts have got other skills, so you might get a systems analyst who could do a data flow diagram, so they could show all the data and how it flows through the organisation, where it's created, where it's deleted, where it's stored. And this is really useful for GDPR, to understand the flow of PII through the organisation. And then processes as well. So patching processes are really key. For all processes, we know how important they are to have security in mind. Now, I heard about the breach they had at the Ritz in August 2020. I don't know if you've heard of this. Now, I haven't worked for the Ritz, but this is just what I heard on Smashing Security podcast. Apparently, customers will phone up and they make reservations to have tea, and they give the name, the details, the credit card. And what the threat actors did was they got this details, they spoofed the telephone number of the Ritz, and they phoned these customers up. And they knew everything about them. They said, I'm really sorry, we know your reservation on this time, there's been a problem with your credit card. So what could you do is, to keep your reservation, you have to act quickly if you paid us in Argos vouchers. And this poor customer, and perhaps it's more money than sense, but we shouldn't joke, and they did, they paid it over. But to get back to processes, if this process had been designed with security in mind, I mean, I don't work for the Ritz, but on the podcast they talked about, well, what did they do with this customer information? Did they just take the reservations down, put them on sticky notes, and then stick them up against the wall so everyone can see? So that's an advantage, an example of how BAs and system analysts can help from security. So we know we're definitely going to have a security champions programme, and we know the roles are going to go after, but what's a good one? What sort of qualities should we look for? Well, I want someone who's going to give a damn about security. Now, when you're a security champion as well, it's side of desk. They have to do it on top of their job. So it's people who are going to stay enthusiastic. So how do I identify this enthusiastic, security-conscious person? As I reach out to the RISO, our Regional Information Security Officer, and I ask him, who is bugging you? Who is not letting it lie? Who is asking those? Who's making a nuisance of themselves by asking question after question? Because they're the people we want as security champions. And then also I've seen, if you bring those people in as security champions, if you give them the education, if you let them make the connections in the security department, they'll stop bugging the RISO. So that's another advantage. And then from my team, one of the goals of the team was always to keep fresh content on the intranet pages. Every week we put new education, something new about champions, to keep people coming back and keep it front of mind. And I look to see who's been looking at the intranet pages, who are going in. And the same with security education. We've got a whole bunch of mandatory security education, but then we've got a plethora of how to code securely, what does the GDPR legislation mean, all this extra stuff. Who's going in and doing that in their own time? Because I want those as security champions. So how do I recruit them, apart from just being keen about security? Well, here's a few methods that I've tried. I'm going to talk about freebies first. Now, they do get a bit of a bad press. I was on the SASIC call, I think back in February. Martin Smith, he was really dismissive of them. He called it that old mouse mat. Well, if it was just an old mouse mat, it probably wouldn't work. But I've tried a few different types of freebies. In my opinion, stationery, that really works. You've got your pens, your post-it notes, your notebooks, because in post-pandemic times, when we haven't got unfettered access to the stationery cupboard, everyone wants it. And you can brand it, you can keep it on their desk, they're working from home, but they're reminded of security all the time. And to quote a marketing term, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So they keep picking the pen up, they keep looking at the notepad. If you use branded sweets, that's gone in an afternoon. Now I've also tried items of apparel, so your t-shirts, branded caps. They may be really grateful to get them, but I don't think they work well, and I'll tell you why. Yeah, you're nodding at the back.
I designed basically for Selco, and I worked as infosec manager, notepad that was basically 10 security rules, and everybody had that on their desk, and they just never forgot it because it sat there. So absolutely.
Great. I'm glad that's great to back that up. But yes, but then items apparel. Now I think security people, we're a pretty cool lot. I do, because we're always excited about what's out there. What are the new threats? There's always something new to learn. I think security people are pretty cool. I have never seen a security champion wear, a branded security t-shirt on a Zoom call or in the office. I think they get folded up and brought out for decorating. So I won't do apparel again. I don't know if you know Tanya from We Hack Purple. I had a conversation with her about her security champions that she runs in the US. She advises to use like security books, so how to code securely. Now I've chosen not to do this because your time is so limited when you're managing a security champions program. The admin in ordering, sending out, especially if they're in different locations. So I've just chosen not to do that, but it's something that you might do in your organisation. Tanya as well, we talked about kudos. So when I give out, I don't do it for pens, but if it's like a nice moleskin notebook, I'll let them know what they've done to get this award. I'll leave a note saying thank you for, the way you shared your knowledge, or this example of coding security was just fantastic. And then if it's in an office in the UK, I'll make a bit of a fuss. I go, I've got a book for him who's done this for security. Tanya said she does these programs in America. She goes through and high fives all the security champions. Now I don't know what the culture's like in Birmingham, but it just won't fly in Nottingham. But maybe it's different in Birmingham. But so I don't high five. So that's kudos. Now thinking of your culture again, development. But again, it's understanding the development culture in your organisation. So if you've got a fantastic training budget, then perhaps this isn't as motivational, but in other organisations, you could choose to give them a Pluralsight licence or let them study for security qualifications. And then security consultant access. So I manage a team in DWP. We've got a security access centre. It's fantastic. We've got a team of people we've got 100,000 colleagues. If anyone's got a security question, they can phone, email, use the chatbot. It's brilliant. But of course other organisations aren't going to have that, and sometimes the security department can be a bit off to the side and nobody really knows who to work with. So if you give your champions access, then they know who to go to. They can escalate their own work, they can be seen as the go-to person in their organisation. So you've recruited and you've motivated your security champions, and now you've got to the business as usual. You're motivating your security champions day on day, and you're running this program. I've identified 4 challenges from running a security champions program in a large and complex organisation. And the first one, scale. So I worked at Experian, about 20,000 employees. It was massive. And then thinking about Tanya from We Hack Purple, she gave me the advice to spend 30 minutes every month with every security champion to build that relationship. And I know Perry Carpenter, who's another guru in security education, he always describes a transformational security program as more of a conversation, not a monologue. But I can't have 30 minutes discussion, which I'd love to with all security champions. So what I do for this challenge is I've implemented a satellite network of security champions. So we've got a key security champion in every location or every business unit, and they've got security champions off of them. And so you cover your scale, but you've got that relationship. Associated with scale is churn. So I've seen a number of figures out there. I think the ONS is saying it's 15%. Monster say it's more like 29%. I know all the goodbye posts in LinkedIn, it just seems to be more like 29% at the moment. And James, you were telling me how
about 34%, I'd say, at the moment.
This is a big deal for your security champions programme because lots of people are going to be leaving the organisation, they'll be coming in, and their education won't be as high as what you need in the organisation. So your security champions can help bring them up to speed. But then you've got to think about, what does this mean for your actual champions? If you have a satellite network and you've got less to manage, I've seen in some organisations they paste up the list of all the security champions on the intranet page, their names, their contact details. What this can mean is though that you're constantly administrating this list, and as I said before, your time's finite. Is it really worth administering this list on the intranet? So I don't put a list up at all. I have an open invitation, talk to the team if you want to know who your security champion is, or if you want to become one, but I don't publish it because it's just admin. And then also, it's easy to miss out if people have left the organisation. The joiners, movers, leavers process often doesn't consider networks outside the chain of command. And I found that if people in the organisation see a list that's out of date, they think, well, that security champion left 4 months ago. Are the security department on top of the latest threats because that list is out of date? So it's like a shop window to the security department. The third challenge, if you work in a global organisation, so you get experience across the globe. Logistically, this means that if you've got education, to get it translated, or if English isn't their first language, to send it out 24 hours before so they've got time to look at it and understand it. When I do conferences or sessions, I always try to do 2 in the different time zones in the day so everyone gets a chance to attend. If I can't, I usually do 3-4 o'clock in UK time, or so it's early US time, and then I record it so people can watch it back later. Also, think about the culture that you've got in the different countries. So when I think about motivating security champions, the champions in India, for example, are really motivated by development. I went to a Pluralsight talk a couple of months ago, and they put some figures up that really drove home how different security is in different countries. So they had this report, and it was the top 20 email subject headers that were used in threats. So these were the top, you're not a Jim, I don't know if you saw it, but it was the top headers that were used to try and get users to open the emails, to click on the links, to open the attachments, and they compared Japan and Germany. Now the top headers in Japan were like, wow, this photo is so cute, or you must see this photo, and then in Germany it was urgent invoice for your attention. You could just see the difference, and that needs to be considered as well in your programme. And then the last challenge, it's similar to global, we're thinking of the culture of the organisation. So Experian, like many private sector organisations, they're there to deliver shareholder value, and it's a delivery-driven organisation. So it's working within that culture. So it's tempting when you run a programme to think, oh, we could do this education session this week and then this conference this week, but less really is more. I stick to one really good session every month, because I don't want the security champions, because this is side of desk, to be going back to their manager and asking for more time, or the manager saying, another security meeting, another one. So just one a month. And then think about the duration as well. So I mentioned this AWS session, 2 hours, it was phenomenal. But normally 30 minutes for the meat of this, really get the essence of the education, then 15 minutes of questions, you're done in under an hour. So everyone's delighted. So this has been my talk tonight. I've talked about the threat landscape. I've talked about the deliverables that security champions can bring to an organisation, who can be a security champion, the sort of person you want to go after, how to recruit them and motivate them, and the challenges in managing a security champions programme. I called out 2 books there. You've got Todd Barnum's Cybersecurity Manager's Guide, and Perry Carpenter, who I think is a guru, Transformational Security Awareness. Now, I always try to keep to 30 minutes of the meat. I hope I've done that tonight, Jim and Nathan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have any questions?
What
the smallest organisation. So we, just to give you a little bit of context, so we're a security company who primarily do penetration testing and all sorts of things. Some of the challenges that we see, is like the organisation has developed a platform, developed a solution. They haven't really considered security until they're 2 weeks before go live, and they're going, okay, can you come in and test it? And they were actually, sometimes for us, what I was thinking, like when you're talking about that, is how could we pick out the security champion in a client organisation? Sometimes though they're smaller than some of the names that you've mentioned, So how small would what's the smallest organisation you've seen that has? Because sometimes the entire development team is 8 people, say, for example, So picking out a security champion in somewhere like there is difficult, but it'd be good for us to pick somebody out and go, actually, this guy is really good, and almost make reference to it. Although you're talking about it from having it from the organisation's point of view, from the inside.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because that's a different challenge. I suppose if it's just a small organisation, they can't specialise in, say, coding. Everyone comes to GDPR, but no, I think there's still value, isn't there, to have that opportunity to do it and being a small organisation, they can reach across a whole. They could talk about physical security or whatever interested them.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about picking somebody out from external rather than doing it internally, which I think your conversation was aimed at.
That's interesting. I haven't seen that, but that's fascinating.
Yeah.
One question. What qualities would you look for in a security champion? Do they need to know loads about security or not?
It really helps, especially if you're establishing it first, to bring in your techies, to bring in your developers. But they don't have to know about it. And I'm talking at the Business Analysis Conference in September as well. I think as long as anyone's got an interest, they could look at any area of security. So you may have someone in HR who is really interested in how or employees' information is held, or whatever floats their boat. I just think everyone can be contacted.
Which understanding what business unit typically is the hardest to recruit for a security champion from? Where would you say is the hardest to recruit finance, HR, tech? Do you want it cross-functionally?
Yes.
So where would you say is the hardest to recruit security champions with across the business? Your experience? I'd say maybe sales, because sales are the worst. Because the system to bypass, we'll bypass it.
The important one with the high impact and the high influence are your delivery managers and your project managers, and we need them to drive the security. But they've got the least amount of time and the most delivery focus. So that's the experience I've had. They're the hardest. And when you mention sales as well, it's all about delivery, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's
Typically in our organisations, we've got issues come from the sales department. Trying to marketing, trying to navigate or share that team.
We had an interesting talk a couple of years ago by, I think you were there, James, by a psychologist from Nottingham University, and he said there's different personality types, and some professions are more risk-loving than others.
Yeah.
That might be more personal than this, but what's your role in the NCSC 100 and what motivated you? Because I really want to join too.
Well, do you know, I've signed the Official Secrets Act. I can just tell you, when I 100 volunteer, I can't tell you more, but
sure.
They do.
I've signed it too. I worked for police.
But they're really open to all sorts of volunteers.
Okay.
It's bringing people in from industry. So I can give you someone to contact, the email address to contact. It's a really open and the chance to go into the donut. I mean, this is an ambition of mine, but since I was a child, and when I walked in there, I thought I will volunteer for you forever. But I'll email you who to contact.
Thank you. That would be lovely. Yeah.
Christian?
Sorry, I apologise, I may have missed this at the beginning. The security never sleeps, clearly, and it was an issue I had to deal with. But in your role in DWP, obviously that's a massive organisation. I wondered, how much do you spend on security engagement training?
I'd rather not say it on camera, but
Okay.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. But
Okay, now I'd just love to know as a comparison, because I find it very difficult getting investment for training and awareness, because it's, I guess, seen as non-traditional security spend. Because the fun stuff you mentioned, like that you need to buy to engage with people, isn't firewall, isn't an E5 license, etc. So, and the challenge I find is I can go and do £500,000 in Microsoft, nobody bats an eyelid. Want to spend £5 grand on a load of jelly beans to give people around the office because they're doing some good stuff, and I get more scrutiny over that. And unfortunately, I can't find. I don't. How much is enough? I guess, and it's probably that challenge in InfoSec that how much you're going to spend to kind of mitigate the issue. But I'd just be interested as a comparison point. So maybe off camera, I'd just look to get a steer, even if it's a range. I don't need the exact number, but and whether it's per employee or whether it's just actually you've just got a big number that you then have to use across the department.
Yes, and the challenge with security spend as well is making sure people know, because if you install a firewall, people can understand that right now, I get that, but it's taking a risk-based approach. If you're going to go after education awareness, you know, really going for the high-hitting areas. So if we're doing a phishing campaign, so 30% of all malware attacks have come in through phishing. You know, you come up with statistics like that, you bring it to life, compare different industries, and then I always take a measure. I take measures before we do the education and measures afterwards. And I know it's a bit nebulous, but just proving the value really helps as well.
Yeah. And one of the other benefits we've found in our programmes has been because there's a talent war and it's difficult to find individuals. We've used our champion network as almost a kind of talent feed. So recognising those people that perhaps aren't in security today, that have that attitude as you mentioned, so kind of high for attitude, training for skills concept. And we've brought a few people through that. They've not made it all the way into InfoSec because they've been poached and gone and got an InfoSec job elsewhere. But we're finding it quite a useful, almost kind of development ground. So they don't need to stop being a champion. If they wanted to, we could potentially develop them further internally. So there's a good case for a champion network and an approach as you've described on a number of levels.
That sounds fantastic, and that's an approach we're taking at DWP as well. They don't have to have all the certifications. It's that eagerness, it's that keenness, it's something about them when we're bringing them in the apprentice scheme. So it's great that your organisation's doing that.
On that note as well, I think it's really interesting what you said about the motivation for the champions development. I haven't thought about that before. And that's a really great way to invest in people. Whereas, you know, where they say side of desk, what's in it for me, that's a great thing for what's in it for them. Yes, that's really interesting.
So this is an anecdote, but we had a security champion at my employer 4 years ago. He was one of our first security champions. He was a developer, he's a consultant developer, junior, and he's now in charge of our security operations globally.
Nice.
So whether it's causal, but I mean that was a case study.
Amazing.
I've got
Thank you.
one question for you.
Yeah, sorry.
How do you just mentioned it about measure? How do you measure the success of security champions?
Yes. The traditional methods of doing surveys, so I've seen, I'm going to be actually quite negative about other methods, but you know, so do you know more, you see the surveys, how much do you know before, and then you do the education, well, how much do you know afterwards, but I don't know how convincing that is, or did you enjoy the security training? Well, that's good that you did enjoy it, but we're not reducing it. If it's the number of people, and sometimes your measures might go up. So when we did a campaign about insider activity, we saw a lot more whistleblowing activity, and so it could be seen that the programme actually didn't work so well, but that wasn't the case. It was bringing it to the forefront of people's mind, so they were seeing incidents and they were reporting them. I think there's more to do in measuring, and what I'd like to do is, and I don't know if this has been done before, is to actually interview people who've made mistakes, because we've all made mistakes, and if they've clicked on a link, to be really non-combative and say, you know, I've made mistakes, but what was going through your mind when you clicked the link, and how could education help? And then I'd also like, you know, perhaps, and I know this would be a harder sell as well, you know, people who have to leave organisations as well, really, when there's nefarious insider activity, what was driving them? Why weren't they thinking of education? Why weren't they thinking that they could get caught? So I don't know the answer. I just look at the number of incidents and the engagement and the calls and the whistleblowing. So I look at engagement, but I don't think we've got a really great answer yet. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you.